That evening began like any other, yet it ended as the night that tore my heart into pieces. I had worked a 12-hour shift at the printing press where I earned just enough to cover food, transport, and the little contributions I sometimes made at home. The work was hard. Ink stained my hands, the machines were loud, and the heat inside the workshop made sweat drip down my back until my shirt clung to me. Still, I pushed through because I had hope. Every time I wiped sweat from my forehead, I told myself, one day, all this suffering will make sense. One day, things will change. When the clock struck 7 p.m., I felt my legs begging me to rest. My bag hung heavily across my shoulder as I boarded the old noisy bus heading to my street. The bus conductor shouted for fare, and I squeezed out the last crumpled note from my pocket. As the bus rattled over potholes, my mind wandered to home. I imagined the small compound, my mother sitting in front of the house peeling cassava, and maybe, just maybe, a hot plate of food waiting for me. Even though things had been tense since she remarried, I still thought of that house as my safe place. I thought of it as the only corner of the world where I belonged. When I stepped down from the bus and started walking toward the compound, the street felt different. It was unusually quiet. The air was thick. My tired body longed for rest, but something inside me stirred uneasily, like a warning. I didn't know that in a few minutes, the very foundation of what I called home would collapse. As I approached the gate, the sight before me froze my steps. 2 bags, my bags, lay outside on the ground. Beside them sat my carton, the one that carried all my old school books, certificates, and clothes. It was tied carelessly with rope, as if the contents inside were nothing but trash. For a few seconds, my mind refused to understand. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and blinked again. Maybe someone had mistakenly moved my things out. Maybe Mama was cleaning the room. I dropped my bag from work and stepped closer. The truth slapped me harder than any hand could. These weren't just things placed outside temporarily. They were thrown out. Pushed out. I was being pushed out. Mama! I called, my voice echoing in the compound. She appeared at the doorway, her wrapper tied firmly around her waist. Her face was stiff, her eyes hard. Behind her, leaning lazily on the doorframe, was my stepfather, his arms crossed, a smirk plastered on his face. Mama, what is this? I asked, my voice trembling. Why are my things outside? Her lips tightened. Because you can't stay here anymore. For a moment, the world spun. I shook my head. What? What do you mean I can't stay here? This is my home. Where do you want me to go? My stepfather chuckled, his voice dripping with mockery. Didn't I tell you? This boy has no respect. He thinks he is a man already. Always arguing, always complaining. He disturbs the peace of this house. Let him go and find his own. I turned sharply back to my mother, my chest rising and falling. Mama, is this true? You're sending me away? After everything we've been through? After all I've done for you? Her eyes flickered for a moment, but then they hardened again. You are disturbing my marriage, she said coldly. My husband is not happy. I can't keep you here anymore. The words struck me like a thunderbolt. Mama, your marriage? And what about me? I am your child. Your blood. How can you choose him over me? She looked away. My stepfather laughed again, louder this time, enjoying every drop of my pain. In that moment, I realized I no longer had a home. I stood rooted to the ground, staring at the 2 people who had turned my life upside down. My stepfather's smile widened as if my pain was his entertainment. My mother's eyes avoided mine, but her silence screamed louder than any words could. Mama, I whispered, my throat dry. Do you remember the nights I stayed awake with you when you were sick? Do you remember when I carried heavy loads for you at the market, even as a boy? Do you remember how I sold sachet water on the streets just so you could have extra money to cook? Mama, was all of that nothing to you? Her lips trembled for a moment, and I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But then she adjusted her wrapper and spoke firmly. Those days are gone. You are grown now. It is time you face life on your own. Her words cut me deeper than a knife. But I'm not a stranger. I cried, my voice cracking. I am your son. Your own blood. How can you throw me out for a man who just came into your life? Lower your voice, my stepfather barked, stepping forward, his eyes blazing. This is my house. As long as you live here, you must respect me. And you have no respect. You are stubborn, proud, and useless. You argue too much. You disturb my peace. I will not allow it. Out! I clenched my fists. My whole body shook with rage. But what could I do? He was bigger, stronger, and worst of all, he had my mother's support. I turned to her again, my eyes pleading. Mama, please. Don't do this to me. Where do you want me to go? I have no one else. Her gaze dropped to the ground. She could not look me in the eye. I'm sorry, she muttered, though her voice carried no warmth. But I can't keep you here anymore. I felt something inside me break. The tears I had been holding back burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of them. Slowly, I bent down, picked up my carton and one bag, and dragged them outside the gate. As I stepped out, my stepfather called after me mockingly, "Let's see how long you will survive out there. Maybe the world will teach you some sense." I didn't look back. If I had, they would have seen my tears. That night, I walked away feeling like an orphan who had just buried both parents. The street was dimly lit. Streetlights flickered like dying candles. Stray dogs barked from distant corners, and the air carried the faint smell of roasted corn from a roadside cellar. I dragged my belongings along, my heart heavy. I had nowhere to go. I thought of knocking on a friend's door, but shame stopped me. Who would believe me if I said my own mother packed me out? People always said, a mother never abandons her child. But here I was, living proof that it was possible. As I walked, my legs grew weaker. My carton scraped against the rough ground until one side tore. Books spilled out. I knelt down quickly, gathering them with trembling hands. My old school certificates, the only proof of my education, stared back at me. I hugged them to my chest. At least I still have you, I whispered. A familiar voice startled me. It was a neighbor, Mama Esther, who sold vegetables in the market. She squinted at me in the darkness. "Ah, my son, why are you carrying bags at this hour? Where are you going?" she asked. I forced a smile, hiding the storm inside. I'm going to stay with a friend for some days." Her brows knitted in suspicion. At this hour? Did something happen at home? I shook my head quickly. "No, Mama. Everything is fine." She studied me for a while, then sighed. Be careful, oh. The night is dangerous." She walked away, still muttering to herself. I stood there for a while, my smile fading into emptiness. Everything was not fine. Nothing was fine. After wandering for hours, I finally sat on a wooden bench in front of a closed shop. I dropped my carton beside me, used my bag as a pillow, and lay there. Mosquitoes buzzed around my ears, biting my arms and legs. The hard bench pressed against my back. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I whispered into the night, "God, why me? What did I do to deserve this?" But heaven was silent. The next morning, the noise of the waking city dragged me from sleep. Bus conductors shouted, "Oshidi! Oshidi!" Shop owners raised their shutters. People glanced at me lying on the bench like a homeless man. Some shook their heads. Others whispered. Shame washed over me. I quickly sat up, wiped my face, and grabbed my things. I couldn't stay there any longer. I thought of my old friend, Daniel, who lived 2 streets away. Maybe he could help. I dragged my belongings to his place and knocked. When he opened the door, his eyes widened. "Ah, my brother, what happened? Why are you here with bags?" I hesitated, forcing a laugh. "It's a long story, Daniel. Can I stay with you for a few days?" He looked at me carefully, his expression softening. "Of course. Come in. You're welcome here." Inside his small one-room apartment, I sat on the floor, hugging my knees. Daniel didn't press me at first, but later that evening, as we ate bread and beans, he asked gently, "You know you can tell me anything. I won't judge you." The words unlocked something in me. Tears spilled as I told him everything. How my mother packed my things, how my stepfather mocked me, how I slept on a wooden bench. Daniel's face tightened with anger. "Your own mother? No, that's impossible. A mother would never." "But she did," I cut in quietly. "And it hurts more than anything I've ever felt." He reached out, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Brother, listen to me. You must be strong. This is not the end for you. It's only the beginning." I nodded, though my heart still felt broken. That night in Daniel's room, sleep refused to come. I lay on the thin mat he spread for me, staring at the cracked ceiling, while memories of my childhood played in my mind like an old film. I remembered when it was just Mama and me. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I remembered the evenings when she would fry akara by the roadside and I would shout, "Hot akara! Come and buy." My little voice pulled customers in, and Mama would smile proudly. I remembered the night she told me, "Don't worry, my son. One day, life will be better. Just work hard and never give up." Those words used to be my fuel. But everything changed when my stepfather came into the picture. At first, I thought he was a blessing. He bought us new chairs for the sitting room and sometimes gave me pocket money. I thought he would be the father figure I never had. But soon, I noticed his glares whenever I called Mama my own. I noticed how he frowned whenever she gave me more attention. And little by little, his words poisoned her against me. One evening, I overheard him say, "This boy will never respect me. You must choose where your loyalty lies, me or him." Those words haunted me now. Maybe Mama had chosen long ago. Maybe I was blind to it. I turned on my side, tears stinging my eyes. "I may have lost my mother," I whispered into the dark, "but I will not lose myself." The following days were hard. Daniel was kind, but I could see the strain my presence put on him. His room was small, his income little. He shared his food without complaint, yet I hated being a burden. One evening, as we ate Gary with groundnut, Daniel looked at me and said, "My brother, you can't stay here forever. You need a plan." I nodded, though my chest tightened. "I know. But where do I start? I feel like everything has been taken from me." Daniel leaned forward. "Do you remember Pastor James? He helps young people sometimes. Why don't you talk to him? At least he can advise you." The next Sunday, I dragged myself to church. My heart was heavy, but something in me hoped for a miracle. After the service, I waited until most people had gone and then approached the pastor. "Pastor," I said, my voice low, "I need advice." He looked at me kindly. "What is it, my son?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. My mother's rejection, my stepfather's cruelty, the shame of sleeping outside. Pastor James listened without interrupting, his eyes filled with compassion. When I finished, he sighed deeply and said, "My child, life can be cruel. But listen to me. Sometimes rejection is the fire that pushes us into our destiny. Do not see this as your end. See it as your beginning." His words struck me. Tears filled my eyes. He reached into his pocket and handed me an envelope. Inside was 5,000 naira. Take this, he said. Use it to find a small place. Even if it is just a single room, it will be yours. Start small, and God will enlarge you. I stared at the money, unable to speak. It wasn't much, but to me, it was hope wrapped in paper. Thank you, sir, I whispered, bowing my head. For the first time since my mother threw me out, I felt a spark of hope. With Daniel's help, I searched for a cheap room in one of the poorest parts of town. After days of walking around, we found a small single room with cracked walls and a leaking roof. The paint was peeling, the floor uneven, and the window had no glass, just wooden planks. But when the landlord said, 3 months rent up front, I handed over the money without hesitation. Standing inside that room with only my carton and bag, I smiled weakly. This is the beginning, I whispered. Life was far from easy. I slept on the bare floor because I couldn't afford a bed. Rain leaked through the roof and soaked my clothes. At night, rats ran across the floor, and sometimes I woke up to their squeaks. But it was my own place. No one could pack me out again. I worked extra shifts at the printing press, and on weekends I carried loads at the market or pushed wheelbarrows at construction sites. People who knew me before looked at me with pity. Some mocked me openly. See him, one man laughed. The boy who once lived comfortably in his mother's house is now carrying blocks like a laborer. Life has humbled him. Each time I heard them, I clenched my fists and muttered to myself, laugh now. One day you will see. I will not die here. And slowly, with each coin I saved, with each meal I sacrificed, I began to rebuild my life from nothing. It was a hot afternoon, and I was sweating as usual at the printing press. My shirt clung to me, my back ached, but I worked quickly, stacking papers and loading ink into the machines. My boss had stepped out, so I thought nobody was paying attention. But someone was. A man in a neat gray suit walked in with a briefcase. He looked around the shop, then his eyes rested on me. I nodded respectfully and continued my work. After a while, he approached. Young man, he said in a calm voice, do you always work this hard? I straightened up, wiping sweat from my forehead. Yes, sir. If I don't work hard, who will do it for me? He chuckled. I like that answer. What's your name? I told him. He nodded thoughtfully. I run a small logistics company. I'm looking for someone trustworthy, someone who isn't afraid of hard work. Would you be interested in a better opportunity? At first, I thought he was joking. My heart pounded. Yes, sir. Of course, sir. He pulled out a card from his pocket and handed it to me. Come to this address tomorrow morning. Don't be late. That night, I barely slept. I kept looking at the card under my candlelight, reading the address over and over, afraid it would disappear. My heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. Could this be the change I had prayed for? The next day, I wore my best shirt, though it was faded at the collar, and polished my shoes until I could see my reflection in them. I walked to the office building with trembling hands. It wasn't a shack like the printing press. It was a real company, with glass doors and a receptionist who looked at me like I didn't belong. But when I gave her the card, she led me straight to the man's office. He asked me a few questions, mostly about my willingness to learn and my honesty. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. You are hired. Start today. In that moment, I felt a new chapter of my life open. Working at the logistics company was tough, but it was nothing compared to the printing press. And unlike before, I earned more money, enough to eat properly, and even save a little. I started small. I bought a thin mattress so I no longer slept on the floor. I bought a second-hand fan, then a table and chair. Each item felt like a victory, proof that I was no longer at the bottom. Neighbors who once mocked me now greeted me with respect. Some even whispered, "This boy is going places." At work, I gave everything I had. I came early, stayed late, and volunteered for tasks others avoided. My boss noticed. One day, he called me into his office. "Young man," he said, "do you know why I hired you that day?" I shook my head. He smiled. "Because I saw hunger in your eyes. Not hunger for food, but hunger to survive, to succeed. Don't lose that. Keep it, and you will go far." Those words sank deep into me. I decided I would never allow rejection to define me again. With my savings, I enrolled in evening courses. I learned about business, computers, and management. Slowly, my value at the company grew. I earned promotions. My salary increased. One evening, as I drove home in a small second-hand car I had saved up to buy, I passed by my old neighborhood, the same compound where my mother had thrown me out. I slowed down. Mama was outside sweeping the compound. She looked older, more tired. For a moment, my heart ached. I wanted to stop, to run to her, to tell her about my struggles and victories. But then her voice echoed in my memory. "You are disturbing my marriage. I can't keep you here anymore." I pressed the accelerator and drove away, swallowing the lump in my throat. 2 years passed. By then, I had moved into a better apartment, furnished with a sofa, a TV, and a dining table. My life was not perfect, but it was far from the night I slept on a wooden bench. One evening, after a long day at work, I heard a knock on my door. I opened it and froze. There stood my mother. Her wrapper was faded, her eyes swollen with tears. Behind her was my stepfather, his once proud shoulders now slouched, his eyes dim. He leaned on a walking stick. "My son," my mother whispered, her voice breaking. "Please forgive me. We have nothing. Your stepfather is sick. We can't manage anymore. Please, we need your help." I stood there, gripping the door frame. My heart pounded. Memories rushed back. The carton by the gate, the laughter of my stepfather, my mother's cold eyes. "Why now?" I asked softly. My voice shook. "Why come to me now, after you chose him over me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. She fell to her knees. "Because I was blind. I thought I was protecting my marriage. I didn't see that I was destroying my child. Please don't turn us away." My stepfather coughed and spoke weakly. "I was wrong. I treated you badly. I mocked you. Forgive me. Please." I stared at them for a long time. A part of me wanted to slam the door and let them taste the rejection I had suffered. But another part of me remembered the nights I cried to God, begging for strength. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. I am not like them. I will not repay evil with evil. I stood in the doorway, staring at my mother kneeling before me and my stepfather coughing weakly behind her. My heart was torn in two. On one side was the memory of the night I slept on a wooden bench, mosquitoes biting my skin while my belongings sat in a carton beside me. On the other side was the sight of my mother, my own mother, begging for mercy. The silence stretched long. Finally, I spoke. My voice was steady, but it carried all the pain I had swallowed for years. "Mama, what you did broke me. I cried nights you will never know. I begged God to show me why my own mother would choose a man over me. You made me feel like I wasn't your son anymore. You made me feel like an outsider in my own home." Her tears flowed freely. "I know, my son. I was blind. I let him convince me that you were the problem. I see now that I failed you. Please give me another chance." I turned to my stepfather. He lowered his head. His voice was weak, almost a whisper. "I said cruel things to you. I mocked you. I thought driving you away would give me peace, but it only brought suffering. Forgive me." I swallowed hard. Every part of me wanted to scream. Do you remember how you laughed when I begged to stay? Do you remember how you called me useless? But another voice inside me whispered, do not let bitterness define you. Rise above it. I took a deep breath. I forgive you, I said slowly, the words heavy but freeing. But understand this, I am not the same boy you threw out. I have built my own life. I will not allow anyone, not even you, to break me again. Mama sobbed loudly, covering her face. My stepfather bowed his head. I stepped aside and let them in. I gave them food. I arranged for my stepfather to receive medical care. I helped them, not because they deserved it, but because I refused to carry the poison of hatred in my heart. But that night, as they slept on my sofa, I whispered to myself, forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means setting myself free. Years have passed since that day. My life is no longer defined by rejection. I have grown, succeeded, and built a future I once thought was impossible. But sometimes, when I sit by the window of my apartment and look out at the city lights, my mind drifts back to that night on the wooden bench. I remember the loneliness, the tears, the shame. And then I smile, not because it was easy, but because it was the beginning of my rise. Rejection taught me resilience. Betrayal taught me independence. Forgiveness taught me peace. I have learned that sometimes the people you expect to protect you are the ones who wound you the most. I have learned that blood does not always guarantee loyalty. And most importantly, I have learned that God can use even the deepest pain to push you into your destiny. When people see me now, driving my car, walking into my office, or speaking with confidence, they often ask, how did you make it? And I always answer truthfully. I was rejected by my own mother. I was mocked by my stepfather. But I refused to let rejection define me. I chose to rise. And because I rose, I discovered who I truly am. So when life throws storms at me now, I no longer panic. I simply remind myself, I already survived the worst storm of all. And that is why I live every day with gratitude, courage, and strength. Because I know one truth. What tried to break me became the very thing that made me.